Today we're going to go back to geometry but work with triangles instead of 3D figures. So make sure that you write this down on your notes, pause if you need to. Key triangle vocab. The first one is a leg. The legs are two sides of a right triangle that meet at the right angle. So A and B, we consider legs. They're two sides of my triangle and they meet at the right angle. The hypotenuse is always the longest side of a right triangle and it's the opposite side of that right angle. So the opposite side of my right angle here is C, and that is the hypotenuse. So make sure you not only have the definitions, make sure you have the picture on your paper labeled just as you see here. The Pythagorean theorem is a formula that we can use to find any side of a right triangle. So the formula is a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where a and b are always the two legs and c is always the hypotenuse. So let's look at this example. If I had a was 3, and if I look at my picture, a is 3 squares, 3 units, 1, 2, 3. If I look at b as 4, I have 4 units, 4 squares, 1, 2, 3, 4. And c is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I do 3 squared, which is 9, plus 4 squared, 16, it'll give me 5 squared, which is 25. And 9 plus 16 is 25. So anytime we need to find one of the legs or the hypotenuse, we can use this Pythagorean theorem formula. Again, make sure that you have the formula down, what each letter means, and the example. Star it, highlight it, make it really big so it stands out in your notes. Take a moment and draw and label this triangle. Again, always pause if you need to. Okay, so I'm looking for the length of the hypotenuse, C. I know this is the hypotenuse because it is the opposite side of my right angle. I have a right triangle. So to find a missing side, I'm first going to write my formula. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Next, I'm going to fill in my numbers for what I'm given. I'm given a and b because I'm given my two legs. Now, it doesn't matter which you use for a and which you use for b. I'm just going to choose a is 16. So 16 squared plus 12 squared, b, is going to equal c squared. 16 squared, or 16 times 16, is 256. 12 squared, or 12 times 12, is 144, and that'll give me c squared. 256 plus 144 is 400, equals c squared. Now, we're always used to doing the inverse or the opposite to get the variable completely by itself. C squared doesn't have a number with it. However, it's not completely by itself, because we have that exponent. So we are still needing to do the inverse. So think about last week when we did square roots. If we are squaring something, the opposite of squaring something is to take the square root. So that means to get c by itself, I need to take the square root of 400 to both sides. I need to figure out what number, when I multiply it by itself, that's what square means, is going to give me 400. And the square root of 400 is 20. So 20 equals c, so 20 equals my hypotenuse. So again, and I can test this out. If 20 equals c, if I do 20 times 20, that gives me 400. So that means 400 is the same thing as 20 squared, which is what we had and what we would have had in the step above. So you might be thinking, well, what do I do if it's not a perfect square and I don't have my calculator? So what you're going to do is you're going to want to go to desmos.com/scientific. This is a calculator on your computer that you can use, and when you put this in, what is going to be on your screen looks like this, a calculator. So to square a number, you need to hit, so let's say I have 12 squared. I'm going to hit 12, so I'm going to type 1, 2, and then I'm going to hit the squared button right here. And it will show up as this on your screen. Then to the right, your answer is going to show up on this side. 12 squared is 144. It'll automatically show up. Now to start a new problem, you can either hit backspace to clear it out, or you can just hit the blue enter. Now to take the square root of a number, I need to first hit the square root button, which is right here. So I'm going to hit the square root, and then I'm going to type in, we're going to use what we did before, 400, 400. So it should look like this on your calculator. And then it will automatically, your answer will automatically come up on the right, and that is 20. And that's what we got when we did our problem beforehand. So the square root of 400 equals 20. And again, you can either afterwards click the backspace and clear that out, or again, you can hit the enter button right at the bottom. So let's say I wanted the square root of a non-perfect square. So the square root of 15, when it comes up, it's going to give me the decimal. Okay? So that number, when I multiply it by itself, will give me 15. It's not a perfect square because it's not a whole number that I multiply by itself to give 15. So if we were to estimate it, I might say it's about 3.9 because the 7 would make the 8 bump up to a 9. So you can still use this if it's not a perfect square, it's just going to give you the decimal. Take a minute, draw and label the triangle as you see here. So the question is asking, rounding to the nearest tenths place, what is the value of x? So I see a right triangle and a missing side, so I'm going to automatically write my formula. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. I'm going to identify the numbers that I have and what letters they go in for. I have these two sides right here. These two sides come together and meet at the right angle, which means I have A and B. I'm looking for the hypotenuse because that is the side that's opposite of my right angle. So this triangle, it's still a right triangle, all it is turned from the way that we saw it before. So I'm going to use 7 squared is A. Again, technically it doesn't matter, I could have put 10 in. 7 squared plus 10 squared equals c squared. So I'm still looking for my hypotenuse. 7 squared is 49. 10 squared, 10 times 10 is 100. This all equals c squared. 49 plus 100 is 149 equals c squared. And then my last step, I need to take the square root of 49 to get c by itself. And when I do that, I get a really long decimal. I get 12.20. It asks for the tens place, which is one number after the decimal. So I look at the second one. A 0 is going to make a 2 stay the same. So my c, my x, is 12.2. And that makes sense because we know the hypotenuse is always the longest side, and 12.2 is. So what if we are given the hypotenuse? So take a minute, draw and label this figure on your paper. So I can see that I'm given the hypotenuse, which is 13, because it's the side that's across, that's opposite of my right angle. I have a right triangle and I have a missing side, so I'm going to write my formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Identify which letters inside I have. I've already identified I have the hypotenuse. I have a leg, which is 12 because it goes to that right angle, and I'm missing the other leg. So I'm going to plug in 12 for A because that's a leg, 12 squared. I don't know my other leg, so I need to leave this as b squared. I'm given my hypotenuse, I'm given my c, so the 13 goes on the other side of my equal sign. Still an equation, now I'm just solving for b on the left side. So 12 squared is 144 plus, bring down my b squared, I don't know it, 13 squared is 169. Now, this is an equation. I need to get b by itself, so I need to get rid of the 144. I'm going to subtract 144 from both sides, and I get b squared equals 25. So now I'm going to take the square root to get b by itself. When I take the square root, that gives me b. The square root of 25, that's a perfect square, and that is 5, because 5 times 5 gives me 25. So x equals 5. So still all we're doing is plugging in numbers and then solving for the variable that we're missing. Again, take a moment, pause, copy down, and label this triangle. So it says to the nearest tens place, what is the length of side BC? So it doesn't say X now, so we need to identify what side is BC. Just go to the letters. Here's B on the left and C. So that's the side I'm missing. So first write our formula since I'm missing the side of a right triangle. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay, identify the sides that we do have. I'm given this side of 20 right here. This is opposite of my right angle, which means I'm given the hypotenuse, which means I'm given C. So I need to plug the 20 in for C. That means my 10 is going to be my leg. It comes to and it touches the right angle. So I'm going to plug that in for A. So 10 squared. I'm missing one of my other legs of B. So B squared. Again, BC is a leg because it touches this right angle. Okay, 10 squared is 100 plus B squared, and 20 squared is 400. Draw your line if you need to. I need to get B by itself, so I need to get rid of this 100 by subtracting it. I'm left with B squared. 400 minus 100 is 300. I need to take the square root of B, figure out what number when I multiply it by itself gives me 300. And I get a long decimal, B equals 17.32. And it keeps going on, but it says the tenths place. One number after the decimal. So go to the 2, ask yourself, does 2 make the 3 bump up or stay the same? It makes it stay the same, so side BC is approximately 17.3. All right, copy, label the triangle in U right now. Pause and find the length of side CT. So I am looking this time, CT is my hypotenuse. So I'm looking for C in my formula because it's the side opposite of my right angle. So that means I'm given my legs. 7, I can plug in for A squared. 24, I can plug in for B. Now, if you did it the opposite way, you plugged in 24 for A and 7 for B, that's fine. And I'm looking for C squared. So you should have gotten 49 plus 576 equals C squared. When I add them, I get 625 equals c squared. I need to take the square root, and when I take the square root, I get a whole number of 25, and that's going to equal c, which is my hypotenuse. Make sure you make any corrections before moving on. C. All right, last one. Copy, label the triangle, and find the value of x. Okay, identify the sides that I'm given. I'm given 11, and this is going to be one of my legs because it is formed at the right angle. And I'm given my hypotenuse. I'm given c because it's the line across from my right angle. So x is going to be my leg I'm looking for. So I'm going to plug in 11 for a plus b squared. I don't know my other leg. And I know my hypotenuse, my c, is 15. 11 squared is 121 plus b squared equals 225. I'm going to subtract 121 from both sides. I get b squared equals 104. I'm going to take the square root to get b by itself. And when I do that, I get a really long number of 10.19, and it keeps going. It didn't say, but hopefully you just rounded to the tenths place. So b equals, and it's going to be 10.2 because this 9 is going to make this 1 bump up to a 2. So x equals 10.2. If you made any mistakes, make sure you correct them now.